Welcome to the Sour Go-to-Market SaaS Takes podcast, where all your favorite SaaS leaders spill their controversial opinions while testing their taste buds. Get ready for sour candy with even sweeter insights.
Hey everyone, what's going on? It's Jason Hassenberg, and you are tuning into the Sour Go-to-Market SaaS Takes podcast. It's a show with sour candies and even sour takes. Today, I'm joined by Brianna Doe, the founder of Verbatim, a full-service marketing agency. On the side, she also is the creator of Sunday Scaries, a job board for executives looking to kick the Sunday Scaries aside and work for great companies. Brianna, thank you so much for being with me today. Are you ready to take the sour plunge?
Thank you for having me. I don't know if I'm ready, but we're going to do it anyway.
All right, we'll get right into it. Sour take number one. We're going to be trying 5 different sour candies. Today, we have 5 different candies lined up, a little bit different than the previous episodes. Instead of having the sour Skittles, we're going to be inserting extremely sour Warheads. So the lineup's going to go like this: sour popping candy by Warheads. It's going to be Crybaby Tears, extremely sour Warheads, Barnett's Mega Sour, and we're going to finish it all off with Toxic Waste Nuclear Fusion. Here we go.
Oh, are you opening yours now?
Yep.
Got it. Okay. Oh, I'm still behind. Okay.
All good. Sour take number one. You can have a great online brand and still have a terrible personal brand.
So just for the record, I do not eat candy, and I was not expecting. I know it's called popping candy, but I was like, "What is happening in my throat?" Okay. What was the sour take?
It reminds me of Pop Rocks when we were younger.
I never had those.
What?
No,
Oh,
I'm
this is
telling you,
it.
candy.
You're getting the full experience here.
I really am. Wow.
So sour take number one. I love this. When I read this, I laughed. You can have a great online brand and still have a terrible personal brand.
Yeah.
Please dive in here.
I think so. One question I get really often, because I love creating content on LinkedIn, I love talking about everything I'm doing, right? And I get the question a lot about how do you build a great personal brand? And I don't think people love my answer. I typically say something like, you already are. Like, even if you're not creating content
Yeah.
or engaging online, you already have a personal brand, right? And I actually saw a post about that just this morning where there's this emphasis on having a really cool online presence. But then in person, your coworkers can't rely on you, your teammates think you're mean, whatever the case may be. You don't do your
Yeah.
work on time, whatever. And so it's so important to balance that. Like, you can share the greatest content online, but if people actually meet you in person and they walk away disappointed, I think that's the ultimate failure.
Wow. And I will like contest to this. There have been people that I've like brought in on projects who are big influencers, and I'm not calling names out, but I've worked with them and I'm like, wow, I thought the relationship would have been more impactful. Now, whether they're spread too thin, but I'd love your advice on this when like you're looking to, work with other influencers and maybe you're an influencer yourself. Like I've noticed it myself, I'm becoming spread too thin and I can't be relied on as enough. So what are some tactics there for leaders listening?
Yeah, so I'm dealing with that right now. I am juggling a lot and I love it, but I have reached my capacity and I'm starting to see like messages are falling through the cracks, emails are falling through the cracks. So first and foremost, recognize that you need support. I just hired my first assistant ever and it's way overdue to be frank. But understand like what your bandwidth is and be realistic. And at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're reliable. If people are expecting a response from you, like you're in the middle of a conversation with them, make sure that you're getting back to them. And if you need additional support around that, then bring on the support or, allocate your time differently. So being realistic about your bandwidth and then also checking in.
Yeah.
Your bandwidth might look different 6 months down the line. And so just keep an eye on it. And if you need, trusted support around you, lean into that.
What are the responses that you've received in person when you meet, I know you've gone to different events this
Yeah.
year, and when you meet people in person and a lot of these are first interactions, what are the responses you're getting? Because really this whole take is about how your online presence should be the same as your personal brand.
That's actually a good question because one thing I don't think people are expecting is that I'm pretty introverted. I'm friendly, like I'm really nice. If you see me in person, I'm really nice, but I'm quiet and writing is just what I love. So it comes really easily to me. And so I think there's this expectation that I'm going to be really boisterous
Yeah.
or just really out there. And it takes me a bit to warm up to people. Um, and so what I hear more often than not is that I'm either more chill or as chill as the person expected, which
Yeah.
to me is a win because it's a hard line to walk. Like I never want to come across as more like bubbly than I
Yeah.
am. But I
Yeah.
want people to recognize that just because I'm quieter in person doesn't mean that I'm not being authentic,
Yeah.
And so it's a relief when I hear that people actually like me after they meet me.
Well, and I think that's a really, really like powerful like section right there because you can still build an online presence and a lot of those like you through telephone, through text, right, through any of these mediums, you can't really show who you are until you're in person, right? And so being able to be in person at these events while also having that online brand, that's where you actually get to be able to show your true self in both mediums, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, sour take number 2. You made it made it past the first one. Let's see how you do on second one. Now, you don't have to do all 4
Okay.
sour baby crybaby tears. I'm gonna do all 4. So it's totally up to you.
Are they the same? Are they
They're
gonna be
all
the
the
same
same flavor.
color?
Yeah, they're all the same
Okay.
flavor.
All right.
All right, here we go. Sour take number 2. Influencer marketing won't solve all your business woes.
Okay. Also,
All
sidebar,
the
I think I'm
founders
starting to
could
like
take this.
candy, but yeah, so it really won't. So one thing I've run into as a marketer and as a content creator is a business decides I'm going to lean into influencer marketing, give it a try. Sorry.
No, you're good.
And they expect like one campaign to generate all of this revenue or all of these leads. And as a content creator, that's really frustrating and disappointing because I can't guarantee that.
Yeah,
I'm also not your marketer, right? I'm not your sales team. I have no insight into your lead funnel, like how you're sourcing or qualifying leads, any of that.
yeah,
You hired me to write a sponsored post or co-create content with you. And as a marketer, if I'm being hired to do influencer marketing for you,
yeah,
one campaign is just not going to be enough to turn the business completely around. You have to have, you have to look through it through the lens of long-term partnerships
yeah.
and long-term ROI. There are quick wins, right? I mean, you can set up tracking, you can set up all of that so that influencers are set up to succeed. And a big part of that, this is getting more sour. A big part of that is working with the right influencers. But there's just this unrealistic expectation that it's going to solve all of your problems and generate all this revenue right out of the gate. And we don't, in a perfect world, we don't even think about other marketing channels in that way,
True.
right? Some companies do, but in general, paid advertising, you don't expect a complete 180 in 2 weeks,
Yeah,
right? And so
yeah.
understanding that even though you're working with humans in this case, you still need to allow for experimentation
Yeah.
and pivots and learning.
What are what are some tips that you can give to founders and maybe it's not founders, but companies who are starting to dip their toes into the influencer marketing space? Like I know my company Sales Intel, that's what we're focusing on right now. Now we haven't
Yeah.
done anything because we have a really small budget. And we're like, okay, how do we allocate this correctly? Want to be efficient, but what would be the tips for companies that are just starting, to build out this program?
Yeah, I would say start small. You don't need to work with the content creator with 500,000 followers. You don't need to work with 10 at once.
Yeah.
Like, same as the other question, like, think about your bandwidth, in this case, your team's bandwidth. Um, and also, and also in terms of budget, you don't need to allocate $500,000 to this right out of the gate. Understand what your audience is looking for, what kind of content, who they trust, who they see as an expert in their space, and then start to engage with those influencers and start to create content like that. Maybe that's sponsored posts, or maybe that's events and webinars and co-created content.
Yeah.
So be open to what that can look like, but really, really focus on first understanding who your audience is and what they look for in content.
When you're and I know you get asked all the time, hey, can we do a sponsored post? Can and let's work
Yeah.
together as an influencer. And for whoever is listening that is an influencer, how do you kind of detect those red flags right away, right? You're like, okay, this isn't a great relationship for me.
I had to learn this the hard way. So a few things I look for. I look to see how much they are relying on me for results. So for example, a brand reached out, wanted to work together, and without saying their name, what they wanted was to specifically drive like 4,000 qualified leads from one post.
That's a lot.
And so the way they were backing into it was, well, we'll pay you this much once you reach that, but it's going to be tied more to performance, so on and so forth. That was a red flag, not because they have clear goals, because goals are great and understanding what success looks like is great. But it goes back to what I was saying originally. You can't tie all of it to the influencer, and I've also spoken to brands who didn't even want to tie it to leads or prospects. They wanted to tie it to conversions.
Wow.
And when you have a product that's higher ticket,
Yeah.
that's not really going to happen. That's just not how the sales cycle or the deal cycle works. So that's one red flag to look out for. If they don't have goals, or if they have goals that you do not have direct control over, like conversions. I would also look out for conversations around budget. If they don't have a clear idea of what they can spend, or if they're really trying to underpay you and sell it as some kind of value add for you, I would pay attention to that. It's
Yeah, of
usually
course.
as much of a value add as you think.
That's a really really good point. Because there are a lot of companies like, hey, use our you could use our tool for free and post. And it's like, well, I haven't used that tool, right? Do I really
Yeah.
need that? So I think that's an amazing end to our sour take number 2. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Let's move to sour take number 3.
And I spit this out.
Yeah,
How does
spit it
okay.
out. Yeah. I ate it, so it just depends what you
You
like.
did?
Yeah. So it's okay. Now, these are the 3 I've been told are the more sour. So the first 2 get you up to speed. Now we're going into more of the sour, really sour candies. All right. Sour take number 3. Here we go.
Oh my God.
Oh, wow. Don't believe the hype that you should
Oh my
only
God.
work.
What? Sorry.
It really hurts. Yeah.
This is disgusting. Okay,
I
go
know.
ahead. Don't believe the hype.
Don't believe the hype.
Oh my God.
You should only work with smaller influencers because they have more engagement. Now, this is something, because I'm working on the influencer program myself, is just super interesting to me. Why? I mean, I haven't heard this before, so I would love to hear your feedback and opinion on why, companies don't have to only be working with smaller influencers.
Yeah, so this is a debate that I see often.
Mm-hmm.
The consensus or the idea or the theory is that smaller audiences have more niche audiences, so there's more value working with them. Once you start working with a content creator or influencer who has 100,000, 200,000, whatever followers, their audience is more diluted.
Mm-hmm.
You see a lot less in terms of like whatever your goals are, but let's say leads, you see a lot less qualified leads.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's not as much value in working with them, and they also cost more, so on and so forth. So even before I started creating content, I worked in influencer marketing, and I did not find that to be the case. It really is a case-by-case basis, and I think it's just more nuanced than people claim that it is. It's not black and white. So I worked with influencers who had 10, 15,000 followers, I assume because they had niche audiences, like specifically in my industry, it was a slam dunk, and we didn't see the success that we were looking for. I also worked with larger influencers, upwards of 150, 200,000, 500,000 followers, who, yes, had like more broad audiences, but they'd also been building so much trust.
Mm-hmm.
So it really, more than the audience size, it's really important to remember that it depends on the engagement, and not just the engagement rate, but the conversations that you're having in the comments. How does your audience relate? How does their audience relate to them? Do they trust them? Are they credible? Do they see them as credible? And it's not that smaller influencers aren't great to work with. They're amazing. Like
Mm.
there is value in, you can find value in most audience sizes to be,
Very true.
but this whole idea that like once somebody becomes a larger influencer, it's a diluted audience and it's not as valuable. I've never known that to be the case. It's all a matter of how diligent you are and how discerning you are about the influencers that you're working with. And as somebody who has around 200,000 now, I'm seeing it personally.
Yeah.
Like my audience is marketers, a little bit of like recruiters, and then content creators. And
Yeah.
that's not diluted. It's just specific industries that I would, partner with.
Well, and it's funny that you say that, because if the company had just come out and said, "Hey, Brianna, what do you like? Who engages with your content?" Most of the time, these influencers are going to know who engages, right? And then you can identify who you should actually be allocating that budget towards. It seems
Exactly.
backwards.
Exactly. And you bring up a really good point. Like if you're going to work with an influencer and they can't tell you like their audience demographics or stats or anything like that, run for the hills. And
Yeah,
if the influencer, make sure you have that information.
yeah.
Whether it's Media Kit or you're using some kind of analytics tool, both parties need to be really informed.
I love that. That is like, because I know influencer marketing. I had talked to Morgan J. Ingram on one of the episodes he's releasing this week, and he's huge on influencer marketing. And this is like half of his sour takes were focused on this. So I just know how important it is now in the ecosystem, especially in B2B. And
Yeah.
every company is hopping aboard it. And so how to do it the right way so that you don't burn bridges, because you work with an influencer and they have 500,000 followers and you treat them bad or put them in a bad situation. It's not like they're, looking the other way. Like they're going to inform their crowd, how the relationship was.
And even in like the B2B influencer or content creation space, it's a very small group of influencers and content creators. We all talk to each other.
Yeah.
So if you're not being respectful as the brand and if you're not, providing fair compensation, all of that, I guarantee people know. They know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You can't hide. So,
you can't.
all right.
No.
Sour take number 4. Now we've made it through the first 3. This 4th one, I just want to be honest, is definitely the most like impactful right away.
Not the next one.
That one, it takes a minute to hit. It's more of the sours on the inside. This one, the sours on the outside.
My hands are shaking. Like I don't think I've ever been
It's
so nervous.
okay. I only had one person
God.
pass out, so no, I'm joking. No,
I was like, did I miss that episode?
one hospital visit. That's all.
Only one.
All right,
Great.
I'll cheers you on this one. Cheers. Here we go. Sour take number 4. You can be an influencer and not have an actual influence. Morgan and I talked about this. This is probably his most important sour take, and I just love it. So before I speak on this, I want to hear your take on this. Why is it in your sour takes?
It's not even in my mouth right now, and I'm just okay. My sour take, influencers. Yes, this goes back to my first one actually about building a personal brand. So actually it kind of relates to all of them. You can have a huge following on social media and not actually have built any trust or any sense of community.
Yeah.
Audience. There are people on like Instagram, for example, that I follow. I couldn't tell you their name. I couldn't tell you much of anything about them. All I can tell you is that I like their posts sometimes, and so I keep following them. And that's one example of not really building like a community.
Yeah.
And so with B2B specifically, there's so much opportunity there, right? Like I mentioned earlier, there aren't that many influencers or content creators. There are so many people that are looking for like subject matter experts and looking for people they can trust when they're looking for new products and new tools. And so it's really important to remember, like, as you create content and as you partner with brands, have a focus in mind, like have a goal. What you don't want is to start doing all these partnerships and then lose credibility and lose influence.
Yeah.
essentially. Because I see it all the time. There's a lot of money to be made in influencer marketing as a content creator, but what are your goals? Like, what kind of brands do you want to partner with? How can you protect like the online or personal brand that you've built, and still maintain that like air of authenticity? I think
Yeah.
that's really, really important.
And I'd love to bring up a topic that I've been just hearing about more is like companies going in and hiring like
Sorry, I can't. Go
no,
ahead.
it's good. Hiring instead of like an influencer marketing play, they'll go in and actually hire like an influencer, bring them in. And it's to me, it depends on how that play is there. So like what's your opinion on that play? Is that a smart idea?
Do you mean like the strategic advisors?
Yeah, like strategic are they strategic advisors or are they more influencers? Um, that whole issue.
I have such mixed feelings about that. I think it's really difficult to do well.
Yeah.
One company that does it, in my opinion, extremely well is Nevadic. I think I'm pronouncing that right.
Yep. Yep.
And for such a small team too, to be creating such,
Natalie over there.
Natalie is crushing it. Like,
She is amazing.
doing a great job. They're doing a really good job at that. But I see more companies doing it poorly than I see doing it well. And I think it goes back to what your goals are at this time as the brand. Like, and be honest with yourself. Is the goal to drive as much awareness as possible, to get your name out there as much as possible? If so, it makes sense that you're going after influencers and
Yeah.
making them a part of the advisory program. But I think it's really easy for it to come across as like, for lack of a better term, inauthentic.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
and it just leaves a bad taste in people's mouth. And it's the same thing with any form of advertising. Like, your audience is not, we're not idiots. Okay. So just be upfront, right? Like, if you were going to work with advisors, how are they actually advising you?
Mm-hmm.
If you just want them as influencers, okay, like that's fine too. Make them ambassadors of your brand, but this weird in between that I find a lot of advisory programs live in,
Yeah.
that's where you start to lose credibility, in my opinion.
Well, and it's something that I've seen is there are some influencers, and this is maybe a different topic, but there's some influencers who are playing in the same industries that are so how do you even have credibility if as an influencer you're working maybe with two competitors against each other and you're on both profiles? So how does that play into impact? Like that's just a total different topic, but
Good
have you had
point.
that happen to you or
I've had that happen to me, but I've seen it, and
yeah.
I think that's actually where you need to worry more about diluting your brand or your audience
Yeah.
rather than like immediately going to follower count.
Yeah.
Um, and the main thing that I think of is just like, how are you communicating it? Having a really strong story
Yeah.
behind it as the content creator or as the brand, and getting really clear on how you communicate like the purpose of this advisory program or whatever. If you put the work in and make it make sense, like, people are willing to, embrace it and understand it, but some of them just feel like half done or half
Yeah.
baked.
Yeah. And that's something that I'm like really conscious about when I'm building out a campaign. It's like, okay, if we're gonna do this thing, let's do it for the right reasons,
Yeah.
right? Find the right people and create like a central message that really matters and like makes an impact, right? Because I think the one issue that rubs me wrong is when companies are building brands and or they're working in with influencers, you can kind of tell it's directly total right back to okay, they're trying to get leads, right? They're trying to generate awareness. Like, and I get it, but couldn't we use these influencers for a better, like to make the industry better, to bring the community together? I want to challenge companies and people who are listening to this. How can you get these influencers involved in a way that isn't just about your company? Maybe it brings awareness, it generates leads, but that doesn't have to be the number one, value
It's
proposition.
interesting you say that, because I talked about this on a panel at Sendosa's retreat a couple months ago.
Yeah.
To Like, if you're saying that to a marketer, I don't think you'd get a lot of pushback.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I would love to provide value outside of the specific sponsored post or co-created content, but it's getting the buy-in from
Yep.
leadership. Like, they don't, and this is a generalization,
No,
but like,
it's so right.
especially with budgets the way they are right now, we all see the market, right?
Yep.
a C-suite executive, I can't think of many C-suite execs who are gonna be like, yeah, let's focus on providing value and like revenue is secondary. And so I
Yeah.
feel like marketers are this uphill battle where how do you walk that line between providing this value, but not necessarily tying all of it back directly to revenue.
Yeah.
And that's where everybody gets stuck.
Yeah. And just amuse me here. How do you get unstuck in that situation?
Honestly, that is the $1 million question. And it's a tough question to answer because budgets are just so tight and marketers, along with other departments, right?
Yeah.
But marketers are really, we have to justify every single, not even just dollar, like every cent
Yeah.
that's being spent. And I think that's what a lot of, especially B2B marketers are trying to figure out right now. And you've got to have a leader who understands it and can think past like the immediate challenges. And then you have to find a balance in the program or campaign that you're building where there is the low-hanging fruit. There are those wins. There's generated revenue, leads, whatever. And then also like the value add that you're mentioning. And I think the balance is also where people get stuck.
Oh yeah, it is. And of course, it always helps if you're working with a leader, an executive who has done that at a past company, right? Who have seen the benefits, the long-term benefits. They're always much easier to work with than somebody who is used to the sales process 10 years ago. Let's, load people in a sequence and send emails out. So like, it does depend on that relationship as well.
Yeah, you've got to have a visionary.
Yeah. All
For
right.
sure.
Sour take number 5. We're wrapping it all up. You've done great so far.
Have I? I feel like I've been
Oh,
quitting.
it's okay. You did it though. So
I did
that's
it.
all that matters. All right. Sour take number 5. We're going to do toxic waste nuclear fusion to wrap it all up. Here we go. Spending money on influencer marketing isn't always the answer. We've talked about it. We've discussed influencer marketing. And we've touched base a little bit on this concept, but I'd love for you to dive even further.
Yeah, I did say that.
Take a second. I see you got the Stanley. For everybody
Hey,
watching, this is sponsored by Stanley. No.
Stanley, please sponsor me. Yeah, it ties back to the business woes sour take. I feel like my brain just glitched out. So yeah, what was the it really did glitch out. So spending money, spending more money on influencer marketing is not always the answer.
Yeah.
If something is not working, like if you have a couple campaigns going or you're working with a group of influencers and you're not seeing results, throwing more money at more influencers might not be the solution.
Yep.
And I saw this more in B2C influencer marketing, but I think it is also relevant for B2B, especially as more companies are, diving into this and testing it and embracing it. As our budgets come back, fingers crossed, there will be that appeal of just throwing more money at it. Well, we'll just work with more influencers. We'll just try this instead. And I actually have a friend who worked with a company, partnered with a company that was working with like, I want to say around 100 influencers, just throwing mad money at people. And there was no direction. It was pure chaos. I don't know how anything got done. They weren't seeing results for most of them. And that had a lot to do also with the way the program was set up and the lack of communication. But every time we would talk about it, I would just think to myself, like, they just keep throwing more money at it. They keep introducing more influencers into the program. It's like slapping a Band-Aid on it.
Of course.
Right. And really, like in that situation and similar situations, take a step back. Like,
yes.
break. Think about what's working and what's not. I'm gonna be willing to pivot because influencer marketing, it's human to human, right? And so you're beholden to, if you're doing sponsored posts, you're beholden to algorithms and to what content people are interested in that day. And if you're doing events or webinars with an influencer, you're beholden to how many have shown up, just all these different factors and variables play into it. And of
course,
nothing that you start testing or doing has to be what you're doing 6 months down the line. And that's one of the reasons why I love influence marketing so much. It's so fun. Like, yeah, there are rules, right, around like disclosures and FTC and all of that. But inside of influencer marketing, you can do essentially whatever you want. And that's exciting for some people, stressful and terrifying for others. And that's where you start to see the lack of like creativity.
Mhm.
Um, but throwing more money is not the answer. It's like ads. If your ads aren't working, don't increase the budgets. Like
Yeah.
figure out where the leak is. And so be willing to stay creative, be agile, reallocate spend, and cut back.
Is there a like real like a good example of this taking place, and maybe have you helped the company be able to like take a step back and figure out what they need to do?
Yeah, I worked with a company that was spending upwards of like 25 to 30K a month on influencer marketing.
Okay.
And it was going okay. Like it wasn't like the example I just shared where, I mean, everything seemed to be on fire, but they weren't really seeing the results that you should be seeing with that kind of spend. And
Mhm.
so at first, what they wanted to do is just increase the spend. Like maybe we need to work with other influencers or do more content with these influencers. But instead, we took a month off, but well, actually more like 2 weeks off to first do a complete audit and analysis. Who
Yeah.
are they working with? What kind of content are they creating? What's going well and what isn't? Like what's performing and what isn't?
Yeah.
How long have these partnerships been going on? Is there like audience fatigue? Things like that. And then we spent the next 2 weeks essentially rebuilding. So what do we need to replace and pivot on? What can we lean into that is going well? And then finding that balance, bringing it together and relaunching with actually a lower spend. We didn't go back to the full 25K at first. My approach is usually to cut back and stay
Yeah.
agile and then increase as you see results.
Yeah, why throw all your darts at the dartboard all at once, right? Take
Yeah,
some time
fine.
to redefine it. I think that's a great way to close out our sour take journey here, Brianna.
Love it.
I really appreciate you joining me. Now, before we close this chapter, I'd love to ask you if there was one insight or one takeaway that everyone listening could walk away with and you would want them to incorporate into their, day-to-day, maybe it's marketing, maybe whatever it is. What would be your main message?
Don't eat sour candy. No, I'm kidding. Um, I would say it might sound like common sense, but I think it's one thing that marketers tend to forget or push to the side when we're dealing with smaller budgets and leaders that want, like quick results, but
Yep.
still prioritize creativity, especially when it comes to influencer marketing, or if you're building a personal brand online, be open to trying new things, like whether it's new content formats or mediums, or just new ways that you engage online, either
Yeah.
yourself or with content creators and influencers. Stay agile. And the whole point of influencer marketing is to have that human connection.
Yeah.
Like you get to speak directly to your target audience. So if you have their attention, let's say like 5 minutes, like what do you actually want to say? And how do you actually want to engage with them? And it doesn't have to be the most, buttoned up like marketing phrase or elevator pitch. Just be real and be human. And people really, really connect with that.
That's what I find when I read your posts. I can tell how real they are. And like
Yeah.
before we end, I'd love to know like what is your process behind like writing these posts out and your angle?
That is a good question. It's a disappointing answer because I'm currently trying to develop more of a process. I worked in social for a long time and I noticed like I got really burnt out. And so when I started creating content on LinkedIn, I wanted to like not put many rules around it or many parameters. And now that I'm 2 years in, like, okay, I need some structure.
Yeah.
So currently, the structure that I have in place is I use the Notion app. So it's on my phone, it's on my work laptop, my personal laptop. Whenever I have an idea, I have like a LinkedIn folder in there where I can store it. It does not have to be fleshed out. I'll
Okay.
just jot down an idea or like a memory that came back to me of a work experience. And then I'm a procrastinator and I think my life has turned into the thing where like I actually work better if it's last minute. So each
Same.
morning I like pick a prompt for myself from this list that I created or repository, and then I write it while I'm
Love
walking
it.
because I feel walking really helps. So
I
it's fun.
really like that.
Yeah.
That's similar to how I have like my notes section. I put in my notes. I've just like I've had people tell me like, you got to use ChatGPT. I know people love it. I know some people don't. It depends. I like to write mine just straight off like the script. I don't use any
Yeah.
ChatGPT. What's your opinion on that?
Like, how are they using it? Like
Well, I
for
think they're
projects?
using the prompt, trying to get some sort of like
Okay.
draft, and then editing it out to feel more
Okay.
personalized.
I mean, it makes sense to me, especially if you're not used to creating content or writing. I don't think it
Yes.
hurts to like leverage some kind of support around that. But it's also, I mean, it's also important to remember that people, I mean, I only speak for myself. I don't want to engage with a robot and I don't want to read a robot's posts. So make sure that you're injecting your personality back into it. And I would also caution people to not get too hooked on ChatGPT or on any AI.
Yeah.
Like look for inspiration in your life, like from other people's experiences, from your own experiences, like what you're learning. Have that balance so that you're not reliant on it.
Brianna, thank you so much again for joining the show and going through the 5 sour candies. I have to say this has been an episode, and I cannot wait to look back and review it myself just to learn more about influencer marketing as I build this thing out for myself.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for the candy.
Thank you. And for anybody watching, if you're not following Brianna now, go on LinkedIn, give her a follow. Thank you again, Brianna.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Sour Go-to-Market SaaS Takes podcast, sponsored by Sales Intel, TAC, The Juice, Rev Genius, and Hockey Stack. More bite-sized content is available on our LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram.